Hey guys, it is Jimmy with Swiss Realty here, and in today's video, we're going to go over a question that I get very commonly from a lot of my investor clients. And that question is, how much money do I need to invest in real estate? And obviously, I can't speak for a lot of other real estate markets. I can only speak for the one that I work in specifically right now, which is Columbus, Ohio. But I'll try to make this as applicable as possible to whichever real estate market that you're in. But aside from that, just to introduce myself really quickly, my name is Jimmy with Swiss Realty here. I help investors find the next buy and hold, BRRRR, flip, short-term, mid-term rental here in Columbus, Ohio. I've done well over 20 million in terms of real estate sales as a real estate agent already. And on top of that, my bread and butter, it's working with investors. So if you guys need any help, definitely feel free to hit me up and I would love to help you guys out and find your next rental property. But aside from that, going back to the video, so the question we're going to go over today again is, how much money do I need to invest in real estate? So to best answer this question, first, before we answer this question, are you planning on going with a cash purchase or a financing purchase? Because there are big differences in each of these. If you're going to go with a cash purchase, you have to understand that you're going to have to finance everything yourself. So that means the purchase price plus the closing costs, everything will need to come out of your own pocket, because again, you're not getting a loan from anyone or from any mortgage lender. You are going to have to finance everything yourself. So you will need that exact amount of liquidity in your bank account essentially. But there are some good things about a cash purchase. Number one is that, obviously, I'm sure you guys know this, is that you pay much less in closing costs. The reason why is because there's no mortgage lender involved. So that means much less legal paperwork and documents and all this due diligence required by the lender. There's much less of that. And because of that, you save a lot more money in terms of closing costs. And on top of that too, it is much easier to cash flow, especially if you're buying something with all cash. The reason why is because, in the standard PITI, equation, there's no PI in the first two letters. The reason why is because, again, there's no loan in this case. So there's no principal and there's no interest. The only thing that you literally have to pay for when you buy a house for all cash is taxes and insurance. That's pretty much it. So because of that, it's much easier to cash flow in this situation. On the other hand, now we're going to be looking at a finance purchase. So kind of going right here to finance purchase. So with a financing purchase, it's much more scalable / you get to leverage out your money as much as possible. The reason why is because when you buy an investment property, again, I'm not talking about owner occupant properties or house hacking properties or anything like that. When you buy a investment property, you typically have to put, standard is 20 to 25% down payment in this case. And because of that, because you're not financing everything yourself, you have much more leverage in this situation. And secondly, because you are using a mortgage lender in this case, more likely than not, you're going to be paying significantly much more in closing costs. So that's going to be some lender points, that's going to be origination costs, that's going to be appraisals, that's going to be, just a lot of other third-party service fees and whatnot, and underwriting fees and stuff like that as well too. So because of that, there is going to be significantly a lot more closing costs. And on top of that too, you also will typically have it harder to cash flow, because you're going to obviously have the full PITI in this case. You're going to be paying principal, you're going to be paying interest, you're going to be paying taxes, and lastly, you're going to be paying insurance as well too. So generally, it's much more harder to cash flow. The one thing I will let you know is when it comes to financing, you don't have to go with the 20-25% down. You can put 30, 40, 50, 60% down payment, even an 80% down payment. So you're not constrained to the 20-25% down. And obviously, the more you put into your principal, the lower your mortgage payments would be in this situation as well too. So it's very flexible as well too. So with that being said, let's look at a $150,000 single family house and take this for example and see how much cash to close is required generally when it comes to a cash purchase versus a financing purchase. So when it comes to cash purchase, if you're looking at a $150K purchase price of a single family house, for example, we're going to be, and again, I've done over 100 plus real estate transactions. I've done many cash transactions. I will let you know the closing fees are super minimal when it comes to a cash purchase. You're typically looking at $500, give or take, $100, $200 here and there, or whatever. But you're generally looking at around $500 for closing fees if you are buying with cash. That's how low it is essentially. So it's essentially the only things you pay are a few fees here and there for recording, for title fees, and That's pretty much it. So 150K. So if you're buying a house for 150K, obviously you're going to have to front all the money, in this case, all cash for the purchase. So $150,000 in the purchase price plus $500 in the closing fees. That is pretty much all you need to do. So generally, your cash to close for a $150,000 house will be $150,000 plus $500 in closing fees. Obviously, there's some exceptions here and there. There's obviously, if there's rents, there's security deposits, there's prorated property taxes. Obviously, your number is going to obviously look a lot different, but I'm just trying to give you a very general rule of thumb. That's my goal of this video. So then next, let's look at a financing purchase. So because you're going to be using financing in this case, let's say hypothetically you buy with a 20% down payment in this case for a $150,000 house, you're looking at a $30,000 down payment. And on top of that, with closing costs, instead of it being $500, you're typically looking at 1.5% of the closing of the purchase price. Of the purchase price. So in this case, it would be the 20% down payment, so $30,000 plus 1.5% of the purchase price. Generally, don't, it's not black or white. Obviously, it could change here and there, but generally 1.5% of closing fees. That's just a general rule of thumb. So that right there, that's $2,250. So you add that all up, you're looking at $32,500 for the cash to close if you're going to go the financing route. So obviously, as you can see, you're putting a much, much, much lower down payment, but also you're paying much, much more in closing fees. So that's kind of how much the difference is in the situation, okay? But here in Columbus, Ohio, the one thing I will let you know, and again, most of my investors, they obviously buy here in Columbus, Ohio. If you want to find the 1% rule, if you want to find positive cash flow, the price range here is anywhere from 120 to 180K for a purchase price of a single family house here. I typically tell my clients 200K and below, just to be a little safe. So again, houses that for 150K, very, very reasonable. And we could definitely find investment properties like this if you are investing in the Columbus, Ohio area. So when I say these example numbers, they're not unrealistic or anything like that. We can 100% find deals like this all day, every day as well too. So, and then very last thing I'll hit on as well too is aside from your cash to close. And obviously when I was using this example, when it came to financing, I use it in the example of conventional financing. So pretty much Fannie Mae / Freddie Mac. Obviously, I know there's exceptions again, like, if you're going with a hard money loan in the situation, you can finance part of your renovation into the hard money loan. But generally, I would say most of my clients go with conventional financing, which is why I'm typically, again, using this as, an example. So aside from, the typical cash to close, there's other things that you will also want to be mindful as well too. And here, the first thing is obviously a turnover budget. So what I will let you know is with the cash purchase and with the financing purchase as well too, you're not financing your renovation. So if there's any renovation needed, you will need to come out of pocket to turn over the unit or the house to make it rent ready. So whether that's $5,000, $15,000, however much money it needs, you're gonna, aside from your cash to close, you're gonna also need to put that money into renovating the house. So again, that's something to be very, very mindful of. Is definitely have a turnover budget for after you close, so you can get it rented out ASAP and start positive cash flow. And again, so because of that, definitely make sure you have your turnover budget or renovation budget set aside for the rental property that you're purchasing. The other thing too is also have a CapEx budget as well too. So let's say during the inspection contingency, let's say you see that the roof is very, very old, like 20 years old in this case, or let's say you see the hot water tank is 20 years old in this case, or let's say you see the AC units on its last legs. Obviously, you should have some sort of a CapEx budget in this case for those bigger items. Obviously, that AC unit or the hot water tank can run another 5 to 10 years. We just don't know, but it is important that you budget necessarily for some major CapEx, but for some major CapEx items, just in case, because again, things happen. We don't know how long it's going to last. It could be tomorrow. It could be 5 years. It could be 10 years from now. We just don't know. So definitely have a little bit of a CapEx budget as well too. And the very, very last thing is also make sure to have some reserves in case. I always typically recommend 3 to 6 months of mortgage expenses as your reserves. Just so obviously if there's a vacancy or something happens, or you go through worst case scenario, go through eviction, things happen, emergencies happen. Obviously, this is just part of life. This is just part of the real estate game. So obviously, always have at least 3 to 6 months worth of mortgage expenses set aside, just for worst case scenarios, essentially. So aside from that, just the goal of this video was to kind of just give you guys a little bit of a ballpark on how much money you need to buy a rental property, especially here in Columbus, Ohio. Things to definitely keep in mind of in terms of cash to close, and also budget/reserve wise. But aside from that, that's pretty much the video. If you guys have any questions, definitely feel free to ask them. I would love to kind of answer them for you. Make sure to drop them in the comment below, or feel free to reach out to me directly. But aside from that, my name is Jimmy with Swiss Realty here. I help investors buy the next buy and hold, BRRRR, flip, or short-term, mid-term rental here in the Columbus, Ohio market. If you're interested in investing here, definitely hit me up. I would love to work with you guys. And yeah, definitely feel free to reach out. But thank you so much. Really appreciate it. Thank you guys. Bye.